Life has settled into a quiet rhythm that feels wholly mine. I've become involved in community activities, joining a few local groups where laughter and conversation flow easily. One friend, Lillian, another widow with a spirited rescue cat named Daisy, has become a constant companion. We take long walks together, and she always teases, "You walk like you still have somewhere important to go." And she's right. I do. I've started traveling. Not in luxury, just simple train trips to charming coastal towns. I carry a sketchbook, a small paper umbrella, snap photographs, and treat myself to a slice of cheesecake before returning home. Life has never felt this uncomplicated, yet so full. I don't reach out to them. Occasionally, Michael sends a text, "Mom, we've moved." Or Lucas asks, "When will you come see me?" And I reply gently, "I'll come visit him. I miss him too." I do. My love for my son and grandson remains, but our lives no longer intersect the way they once did, and that is all right. The quiet of my home is a comfort now. One evening, I settled onto the sofa with an old photo album. A photograph of a younger me holding newborn Michael caught my eye. His small face bright with innocence, my own smile brimming with hope. I tapped the page softly and whispered, "You did your best. It's okay to let go now." I pulled a blanket over my shoulders as the sunset poured through the windows, painting the room with warm light. In that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. True happiness isn't measured by the number of people surrounding you. It's found when you finally stop shrinking yourself to accommodate the wrong ones. My life, my quiet, free, fully lived life, is finally mine. They would know soon enough. Informing them would have been a courtesy. Withholding it was my right. That evening, I contacted a respected local real estate agency and listed the Berkeley house at fair market value. The agent they sent was sharp, efficient, and professional. Once she confirmed I was the sole owner, free of mortgages or liens, she arranged photos, a video tour, and had the listing live within 48 hours. "This won't stay on the market for long," she said confidently. "We can have it sold quickly. No loose ends," I replied. She smiled. "Owners like you make my job easy." 9 days after the listing went live, the first showing was scheduled. A bright Saturday afternoon, the agent arrived with a young, eager couple, excited at the prospect of buying their first home. Chloe was there that day, lingering in the hallway with narrowed eyes, likely assuming they were neighbors or friends. When the agent spoke cheerfully in the kitchen, describing the property's prime location, clear title and outright ownership, Chloe's face fell. "Who are you? Who gave you permission to be here?" she demanded, rushing into the room and planting herself in the middle. The agent remained calm and professional, producing the signed authorization letter. "We are here on behalf of Mrs. Margaret Hayes," she said. "She is the sole registered owner. Keys and management verification are in order. This is a standard showing." Chloe went pale, flushed, then green with rage. She whipped out her phone, likely calling Michael. By then, neighbors had gathered, whispers spreading. "Is Margaret really selling the house?" The next afternoon, Michael called. His voice was tight, panicked. "Mom, is this some kind of mistake? Are you really selling the house?" "No mistake," I replied, calm as a breeze. "But we're still living here." "You can't just think about Lucas." "Temporary," I said smoothly. "Stay until closing, then move out. I'm already in the second round of negotiations. Time to make plans." A long silence followed. Finally he murmured, barely audible, Chloe's losing it. I said nothing. She should have realized the truth long ago. By the third week, the agent called. "Margaret, we have a solid offer. Full asking price, cash buyer, ready to close fast. Do you want to accept?" "Yes," I replied immediately. On the day the buyer arrived to sign, Chloe finally erupted. Waiting at the neighborhood entrance, she blocked the agent and young couple, tears streaming, panic in her voice. "We've lived here for so long. How can you sell the house behind our backs?" She even called the police, screaming about a malicious eviction. It was chaos, but it was hers, not mine. I had done nothing wrong. Every decision I had made, every step I had taken, was within my rights, and for the first time in years, entirely for me. The officers arrived, examined the deed, and one of them spoke with calm authority. "This is private property. The registered owner has the legal right to sell. You are not tenants. You are not on the title. You must vacate." That was the moment Chloe's composure finally broke. Michael appeared shortly after, trying to calm her. She shoved him aside, yelling, "Where have you been? Your mother is kicking us out." I wasn't there in person. Tom delivered the official notice on my behalf. It was concise. The property had been sold, and all non-titled occupants must vacate within 2 weeks. Failure to comply would result in legal eviction proceedings. This wasn't vengeance. It was a rightful consequence. They had forced me out of my home. I was merely showing them the door. Chloe's theatrics had gone on long enough. A week before closing, she hadn't yet given up. On a crisp, clear morning, she appeared at my door with Michael. I opened it to find them waiting at the bottom of the steps. Michael looked weary, and Chloe hid behind oversized sunglasses, her lips tight. "Mom, can we talk?" Michael asked softly, almost timidly. I didn't invite them in. My hand rested firmly on the door frame, a boundary I wouldn't let them cross. Chloe removed her sunglasses, revealing red, swollen eyes. "Grace, we have nowhere to go. We were wrong. Please think of Lucas. He's used to this house. Let him stay. We'll move out ourselves. Just let him remain where he feels safe." Her voice trembled, her face pleading, tears streaming down her cheeks. Months ago, such a display might have worked. Not anymore. "You're both adults," I said calmly. "Finding a rental isn't impossible. This isn't about Lucas. This is about facing the consequences of your choices." Chloe's facade began to crack. "So you're really going to be this heartless?" "Heartless?" I repeated, voice steady. "Was it heartless when you moved your parents into my house and pushed me into the guest room without a word?" She had no answer, turning silently to Michael. He swallowed, voice faint. "Mom, you used to say you just wanted us to be happy, to be together." I nodded. "I did. But right now your together doesn't include me. What you want isn't a mother. It's a backup plan, a housekeeper, an emergency fund, and I am done playing those roles." I reached to my side and held up a sealed envelope. "This is the formal notice from Tom. The sale is finalized. The title belongs to the new owners. You have 5 days to vacate, or the buyers will pursue legal eviction." Michael took the envelope, stunned, as if he'd received a verdict. Chloe's mask shattered completely. "You're so cruel," she screamed. "Just wait. When you're old, alone, and sick, we'll see who's there for you." I remained composed. I'd rather grow old alone than in a house where family treats me like an ATM until nothing is left. "And don't worry," I added softly. "I've already made all my retirement plans." Chloe said nothing further. She turned, slammed her car door with a force that rattled the windows, and sped off, the tires squealing like a tantrum from someone who had finally met the limits of their control. Michael climbed into the passenger seat without so much as a backward glance. After that day, the calls stopped. No more anxious, manipulative voicemails from Emily, no more pleading or excuses. The only messages that came were from my real estate agent, a short, practical update. They've started packing, but they clearly have nowhere to go. Are you willing to postpone the handover? I replied with 2 words, absolutely not. Friday morning brought a call from the buyer's lawyer, firm and precise. The moving company would arrive the next day, and if the house wasn't cleared, formal eviction proceedings would commence. I hung up and went to the window, watching the old sycamore outside sway in the gentle breeze. That tree had witnessed decades of my life, and now it was watching the final chapter of this one. By noon the next day, the neighborhood chat lit up. "Emily's outside yelling at the movers," one neighbor wrote. "Grace finally sold the house." Another neighbor sent a short video. Emily stomping on the curb in ridiculous heels, flailing and screaming at anyone who touched a box. "Careful with that. That's my skincare. Don't touch the wardrobe." Daniel was slumped against the wall, phone pressed to his ear, pale and defeated. Half-packed boxes and scattered clothes surrounded him. Lucas sat quietly nearby, a small dog in his lap, absorbing it all in silence. As for Emily's parents, the same ones who had once settled smugly into my bedroom, they now huddled in a narrow hallway, struggling to tape up a few chairs. No one helped them because no one owed them anything. Rumor had it they had secured a tiny, overpriced apartment on the edge of town. No elevator, barely enough space to lie down. Lucas's extracurricular activities were canceled, and the bills were mounting after they had defaulted on their mortgage earlier in the month. Emily and Daniel were in constant conflict, blame, guilt, and bitter arguments about promises and expectations. Once the chaos settled, I went to the lake alone. The sun warmed my face, a soft breeze ruffled the trees, and a few ducks glided across the water. I sat on a bench, my hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, one hand resting on my old scarf, a gift from my late husband, worn but comforting. I hadn't believed I could see this through, not because I lacked the means, but because I doubted my own strength. Yet, when your heart hardens and you stop carrying the burdens of others' entitlement, you realize how much you've been sacrificing just to maintain a peace that was never yours to begin with. Selling that house didn't just give me closure, it gave me freedom. Tom had already helped me set up an ironclad trust, securing my living expenses, health care, and long-term care. I even added a charitable clause. A portion of my estate would go to a legal aid foundation supporting women in California denied control over their own finances in marriage and family. I wasn't here to rescue Daniel, and I wasn't interested in punishing Emily. I was here to live my life on my terms. And finally, I could. Emily began working behind the scenes. A few days later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. One call after another, all from so-called concerned relatives. First came Michael's aunt, her voice dripping with judgment the moment I answered. "Margaret, what on earth are you doing? I heard you stormed out. Living alone at your age? Michael and Emily are trying their best. You're the mother, you should be patient. Don't stoop to arguing with your daughter-in-law." Then my niece Anna called. Her tone was gentler, almost hesitant. "Aunt Margaret, Michael told me what happened. Maybe Emily made a few mistakes, but please don't take it too hard. Just talk things out. We're worried about you being on your own." Polite words, yes. but the meaning was the same. I was being painted as difficult, petty, selfish. For a moment, a familiar tightness gripped my chest. Then I laughed quietly, bitterly. Of course, everyone had been fed Emily's version. Not one of them asked what really happened. They didn't want the truth. They only wanted the mother to do what mothers are supposed to do. Swallow her pride and return, ready to serve again. I didn't bother arguing. To those who seemed genuinely concerned, I said calmly, "Thank you. I'm fine. I just needed my own space." For those clearly reading Emily's script, I spoke plainly. "She's having a hard time, you say?" And I didn't? She wanted to move her parents in. Fine. But she used my house to do it. She kicked me out of my own room. And now she wants my money too? If you think she's such a saint, go ahead and pay her bills. Mine didn't fall from the sky. After a few more calls like that, the chorus of peacemakers began to fade. Emily's little PR campaign had backfired. The episode, however, reminded me of something crucial. I could no longer afford to react blindly. Words carry weight, especially when twisted and repeated behind your back. If Emily wanted to play dirty, she could easily rewrite the story and make me look like the villain. I wasn't going to let that happen. I needed a plan. Quiet, deliberate, careful. I began methodically. First, I went through months of messages from Emily on my old phone. Text after text. Subtle complaints. Gentle hints that I should cover this expense or that one. I took screenshots of everything, labeled them, and stored them carefully. Next, I reached out to an old neighbor from the Berkeley block where my house was. "It must be lively at the house since I moved out," I asked casually. He lowered his voice, whispering like a conspirator, and told me what he'd overheard. Emily complaining openly, broadcasting her version of the story to anyone who would listen. "She's still holding on to that house, saying it'll be hers soon," he said. "She forgot the golden rule about neighbors. Someone is always paying attention." Soon, a few voice clips landed in my inbox, her tone and words crystal clear. I also contacted a retired family law attorney I'd known for years, someone experienced with elder rights and financial exploitation. I told her I wasn't planning to go to court. At least not yet. I just needed to understand my rights, my leverage. I needed clarity in my mind and the proper cards in my hand. It felt good. This sense of control returning, slowly but steadily, piece by piece. If they tried to corner me again, or spread lies about me, I would be ready. I wasn't some naive elderly woman unaware of the world. By the start of the second month, things began to unravel exactly as I expected. Without me there to quietly handle everything, Daniel and Emily's carefully managed life started to crumble. The bills stacked up. The house wasn't running itself. Emily kept up her spending as if nothing had changed. Designer bags, spa visits, personal trainer sessions, all while her parents lived under the same roof. But the reality wasn't what she'd imagined. Her parents were set in their ways, simple in habits, early to bed, eating plain meals. She liked reality TV late at night. Her father woke at dawn, stomping down the hall. Tension built quickly. Her complaints grew louder. The food tasted like hospital fare. The house was too small. The bills too high. She rolled her eyes at her parents' lectures and snapped at Daniel. "Are they here to visit or just to drive me crazy?" she barked one night, loud enough for neighbors to hear. Arguments with Daniel became frequent. She screamed about being trapped, about losing her mind, and Michael. He was crumbling. One night there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find him looking like a ghost. Dark circles under his eyes, hair unkempt, his shirt wrinkled and worn. I let him in. He collapsed onto the sofa as if he'd been standing for days. His eyes were red, his voice trembling. "Mom, I can't take it anymore," he admitted. He poured everything out. Emily's temper, her demanding parents, the rising bills, sleepless nights, stress, the constant chaos. And finally, in a voice nearly broken, he asked, "Could you just come back? Just for a little while? Or maybe help with some money? Anything. We're falling apart." For a fleeting moment, a spark of instinctive maternal concern stirred. He was still my son, the boy I had raised, loved, and believed in. But the feeling didn't last. It was drowned by disappointment. Cold, sharp disappointment. I poured him a glass of water and waited. Then I spoke, voice low, steady, firm. "Michael, this is the life you chose. When your wife moved her parents into my house without asking, when she pushed me into the guest room, you said nothing. Not a word. You chose silence. You chose to give in. Now you have to live with the consequences." I let my eyes rest on his frozen expression for a long moment. Then I added, slow and deliberate, "And as for the money, don't ever ask me again. Tell Emily this. My money is for me and me alone. Not a cent more. Not ever." Michael's lips quivered as if he wanted to argue, to beg, maybe even to protest, but no words came. He just sat there, head bowed, the weight of responsibility finally sinking in. I knew my words cut deep, but some truths have to be said clearly and without apology. Compassion in the wrong hands is dangerous. When given to those who see generosity as an obligation, not a gift, it becomes a tool for exploitation. The more you give, the more they take, until nothing is left of you but silence and exhaustion. Michael needed to understand that. He needed to wake up. I closed the door behind Michael and leaned against it for a long moment, taking in a slow, steady breath. My chest was heavy, yes, but beneath that weight was something solid. Clarity, resolve, a quiet fire. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I had to do, not for them, but for myself. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Hello, Tom, it's Margaret. About our last conversation, I've made up my mind. I want to move forward with updating my will." There was a pause on the other end, the careful hesitation of a man weighing his words. "Are you certain, Margaret? I know this isn't easy. Michael is your only son." My answer was firm, unwavering. "I've made my decision. Some people, some mistakes, aren't worth waiting for." Tom didn't argue. His tone shifted to professional, measured. He walked me through the legal steps for revising the will, the documents I would need, and the language that would make it ironclad. After hanging up, I sank onto the couch in my quiet Oakland apartment, bathed in the warm afternoon light, and took in my surroundings. Everything was simple, modest, but it was mine, and what I owned was far from nothing. 2 homes, this well-located Oakland apartment, worth over $300,000, and the larger Berkeley house where Michael and Emily were now living, valued at nearly $750,000. Add to that nearly $100,000 in savings, plus annuities and long-term investments, the life's work of my late husband and me. I had never questioned leaving it all to Michael. He was my only child after all, but things had changed. His passivity, Emily's greed, their disregard for me, little by little, they had chipped away at a lifetime of love and trust. I could already imagine how they would squander everything. New cars, designer bags, endless gadgets. I could see them turning on each other over every dollar, and when it came time to honor me, I doubted they would even bother with the smallest gesture. I would not allow that. Not after all I had lived for, not after all I had worked for. The next morning, I called Tom again. "One more decision," I said. "I want to sell the Berkeley house." By noon, we met in his office. He slid the listing agreement across the desk. I read it carefully, line by line, then signed it with steady hands and no regret. "You have full authority to sell the property," Tom said, tucking the papers into a folder. "They have no claim. I'll personally oversee every step so there's no interference." I nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, a deep sense of relief settled in my chest. That afternoon, Tom and I drove to the Berkeley property and went straight to the management office. "I'm here to collect the spare keys," I said calmly, handing over my ID, a copy of the deed, and the official letter from Tom. "I'd also like to remove Michael Hayes and Emily Hayes from the list of registered occupants." The manager raised an eyebrow. "Do they know you're selling the house?" I offered a faint, steady smile. "Not yet, but it's all taken care of." The hardest part wasn't losing my bedroom. It was realizing my own son stood by and let it happen. Something inside me went still that moment. A quiet, icy resignation settled over me. It wasn't that I didn't know how to defend myself or assert my boundaries. I simply didn't want to anymore. Because when your heart breaks a little, your will to fight dims. The deepest hurt in the world isn't death. It's standing in your own home, looking at your child, and hearing nothing but silence when what you need is, "Mom, this is your home." That afternoon, Emily took her parents out to explore the neighborhood and stock up at Costco, radiating triumph as though she had won some private victory. Michael didn't say where he was going, but I suspected he'd retreated to a coffee shop to avoid the tension. I closed the door behind me and began packing. I didn't take much, just the essentials, my ID, important documents, a few pieces of jewelry, and the photo from the broken frame, wrapped gently in a soft towel and tucked safely into my bag. Clothes and toiletries? I left them. Let them have it all. I had no idea what lay ahead. I picked up my phone and called my sister Rosa. "Rosa, can I ask a favor?" I kept my tone light. "Remember that cleaning service you mentioned a while back? Could you send me their number? I want to hire someone reliable for a deep clean at my old place in Oakland. I'm planning on moving back for a bit." A pause on the other end, then her voice, filled with concern. "Margaret, are you okay? Did Emily say something again? Did you two argue?" "It's nothing serious," I said carefully. "I just want a quieter place for a while. Some things you don't share, not even with your sister. Family worries are heavy enough already." After hanging up, I called the cleaning company and scheduled a full service for the next day. Once that was set, I zipped up my suitcase and quietly stepped out of the guest room. From the front door, Emily and her parents came in, arms full of bags of fruit and snacks from their shopping trip. Emily froze for a fraction of a second when she saw me with my suitcase, then quickly restored her practiced smile. "Margaret going on a little trip?" "Staying with Rosa." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes betrayed her. Triumph glimmered there, the smug certainty that she had forced my hand. She thought I was sulking, that I'd return in a few days, embarrassed and compliant, ready to resume my old role as caretaker and peacemaker. I didn't even look at her. I turned toward the entryway to change my shoes. Mom, are you really leaving? Michael's voice startled me. I hadn't even noticed him come in. He rushed over, panic in his expression, a hand half raised. But Emily's subtle glance froze him in place. His eyes darted, unsure which way to move, torn between us. In Emily's gaze, I saw absolute certainty and contempt. Where do you think you're going? You have no support, no backup. You'll come crawling back, and then we'll decide what's left for you. I almost laughed. People like her never stop pushing. You give a little, and they take everything until you're dangling at the edge, nowhere left to stand. There's no point in arguing. Logic doesn't work on them. Only reality does. I slipped on my shoes and walked out, letting reality speak for me. I didn't answer anyone. I didn't respond to Emily's fake concern. I opened the door and stepped outside, leaving just one sentence behind. I'm going home. You can manage everything from here. And with that, I walked away. The door clicked softly behind me, trapping Emily's forced smile and Michael's anxious hesitation inside. Downstairs, a taxi waited. I slid into the back seat and watched the streetlights blur as we drove off. I didn't feel sadness, not even a little. What I felt was light, strange, almost liberating, as if a weight I had carried for decades had finally lifted. When your heart has been numb for so long, nothing left can break it. Pain stops bringing tears. It becomes quiet clarity. This wasn't an escape. It was a reclaiming of myself. The house I returned to was in West Oakland, in an old familiar neighborhood. It had been part of a housing program when I was still teaching, and later I had bought it outright. It wasn't grand, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, but it was mine. The neighborhood was quiet, the neighbors familiar, and the ownership absolute. Sure, no one had lived there for years. Dust lay thick in corners, the air stale with mustiness. But I didn't mind. This was the place I had chosen, the space I belonged to. The next day, the cleaning crew arrived promptly. They scrubbed, dusted, and polished every surface, restoring the house to life. I opened every window, letting sunlight pour in and chasing out the years of shadows. The furniture was still the same, edges worn and styles dated, but each scratch and dent carried memories of me and my late husband. This was my sanctuary, a place no one could invade. No Emily with her sweet smiles, no meddling parents, no manipulations disguised as concern. I set about putting the house back together piece by piece. The photo of my husband went back on the nightstand. The orchid they had discarded returned to the sunniest corner of the balcony. Slowly, my life began to feel my own again. I signed up for an oil painting class at the community college, something I had wanted for years. I met friends for morning walks by the lake, enjoyed coffee dates, and spent time in easy, unforced conversations. The air felt lighter. Laughter felt real. Even walking felt easier. At night, I'd make chamomile tea, watch an old movie, or read a few pages of a novel I had never finished. I went to bed early and slept soundly. The insomnia that had haunted me for years disappeared, along with the heavy ache that had sat on my chest like a stone. In the first few days, Michael called several times. His voice had the nervousness of a teenager worried about disappointing a teacher. "Mom, are you doing okay? When might you come back for a visit?" I answered quietly, firmly, like a rock. "I'm fine. This is my home now." He would hesitate, then push gently. But Emily and I were worried. "Are you really?" "I am," I said, clear, calm, Certain, once, twice, 3 times. Eventually, he stopped calling so often. Perhaps Emily gave him that look, or perhaps he finally understood. The calls became fewer, then almost none, leaving me with the quiet, the sunlight, and a life that was finally my own. Eventually, all that reached me were the obligatory holiday messages, Happy Thanksgiving, Mom, or the occasional clipped, How's your health? I didn't mind. I had once believed that happiness in later years came from seeing your children thrive, that their well-being was a reward for all your sacrifices. But now I understood that real happiness is having money in your pocket, peace in your heart, quiet in your home, and freedom from people who think they own you. In this little house, my life was calm, and the stillness was a luxury I hadn't felt in years. Emily, however, was clearly struggling. Her whole plan had relied on me breaking, on loneliness and frustration piling up until I came running back, willing and eager to serve again. But a month passed. I didn't return. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for anything. Her trap had been sprung, but the prey had vanished. At first, Emily sent Michael to coax me back, soft and tentative, a mix of concern and guilt. I remained calm and unmoved. Then finally she called herself. From the first word, her syrupy, exaggeratedly sweet tone was unmistakable. Margaret, we're just a little worried, with you living on your own. Lucas asks about you every day. I replied non-committally. And nothing more. A pause, and then the subtle shift came. Impatience, barely masked. Margaret, ever since my parents moved in, expenses have really shot up. When you were here, you helped out a little. Now you're over there, peaceful, while we try to manage everything ourselves. There it was, the real reason for the call. Emily's soft, sweet words were just a mask. The target was obvious. Money. Her voice continued, polite but sharp. Dad's therapy isn't cheap. Lucas's music lessons require next semester's tuition soon. Things are really tight. I let a small smile cross my face. She was circling carefully, testing the waters. My response was calm, deliberate. Really? Then it sounds like it's time you two sit down and work out a proper budget. Silence. She hadn't expected that. Then her voice hardened. Margaret, you have a good retirement fund, right? Maybe you could help us out a little. We're family. We should look out for each other. Family. I let the word hang between us, heavy with irony. The day her parents moved in, who had forced me out of the master bedroom, who had shoved my belongings into a small room and said, "The main bedroom is better for the elderly," all with a smile. Funny, no one mentioned. We're family, so of course. I didn't mince words. Emily, my pension is the result of a lifetime of work and sacrifice. It's for me and me alone. You moved your parents into my house without asking me. That was your choice. You live with the consequences, but do not expect me to cover your expenses. Before she could respond, I hung up. I exhaled slowly. To them, I was no longer a mother. I was supposed to be an endless resource, always available, always generous, always expected to give with a smile. Well, that machine was officially out of service, for everyone but me. And when sweetness failed, Emily did what she always did best. She switched tactics. I used to believe that raising children was simply about giving love and guidance. But at this stage in my life, I've come to understand that sometimes raising children is also about preparing for the day you might have to defend yourself from their schemes. That thought settled in my chest like a dull, persistent thorn. My daughter-in-law, Emily, didn't bother calling or texting. She simply arrived with her parents from their small town and moved them straight into what had once been my master bedroom. She smiled brightly, as if this were a generous gift, and stated it as casually as noting the weather. "Mom, you'll be moving to the guest room. My parents need the main bedroom. They're older, and the sunlight is better there. It's healthier for them." I stood in the middle of the living room, stunned, feeling like a stranger in the home I had paid for. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warm and golden, yet it did nothing to thaw the cold tightening around my heart. I looked toward the bedroom that had been my sanctuary. The door was wide open, cluttered with unfamiliar suitcases and loud, mismatched bedding. My eyes drifted to the guest room furniture shoved into corners, and my late husband's favorite rocking chair jammed against the wall, precarious as if it might topple at any moment. Each detail hit me like a tiny blow. There was no space for me in this house, neither physically nor emotionally. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I knew that would achieve nothing. Confronting Emily would be pointless, and talking to my son, Michael, who followed her lead unquestioningly, would only embarrass him. Instead, I quietly packed a small suitcase while they slept on the sofa, probably assuming I was sulking and would return after a few days, ready to resume my unpaid role as household manager and emergency ATM. How naive. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 66, retired from teaching high school art, and I have spent my life instilling the values of respect, structure, and boundaries. Do they really think I can be manipulated so easily? They have gravely misjudged me. The first day I left, I called my attorney. What they don't know is that I've already begun the process of selling the house. After my husband passed away from illness a few years ago, it was just Michael and me. I could have lived alone in peace, but I moved in thinking I could help. Watch Lucas, prepare meals, keep the household afloat. I was the one who kept the home running smoothly. The days were tiring, but outwardly we maintained a fragile harmony. Emily was young, attractive, and spoke with a sweetness that hid her intentions. Each compliment she offered carried a subtle undertone of what she might gain. She swapped designer handbags with the seasons, visited salons more than grocery stores, and most of the household bills came from Michael's and my earnings. She acted polite, but the barely noticeable flicker of disdain in her eyes pricked me like a fine needle. At dinner, she smiled and said, "Mom, the food is a bit salty. We're trying to eat low sodium and low fat now. It's healthier." I only smiled back, but inside, I was already planning my next move. Seconds later, Emily would grab her phone and order Lucas a giant bucket of fried chicken and fries. Sometimes she'd pick up my reading glasses from the sofa arm, twirling them in her hand like they were some kind of relic, and laugh. "Oh, wow, these are ancient. I'll take you shopping for something more modern one day." Of course, that promise evaporated as quickly as it was made. I swallowed my frustration, telling myself to keep the peace. Michael was caught in the middle, and I didn't want to make things harder for him. After all, this 3-bedroom apartment we lived in had been purchased with decades of savings my husband and I had scrimped and worked for. The title was in my name, Margaret Hayes. When Michael got married, I understood their financial struggles, so when they asked to move in, I agreed. The house was spacious enough, and I thought 3 generations living together could be a blessing. We could support each other, share meals, and help care for Lucas. I never charged them a cent in rent, and often I even covered utility bills with my retirement funds. I truly believed my sacrifices would earn gratitude, respect, maybe even a little appreciation. About a month ago, Emily started talking about her parents casually, almost as if she were flipping through a magazine. "Mom," she said one evening while stirring her soup, "my parents' house is falling apart. It's freezing in winter and damp as a swamp in summer." She didn't even glance at me when she added, "And my dad has bad joints. The moisture makes it worse. Don't even get me started on the doctors there." Then she leaned back, speaking softly but with a hidden weight. "I was thinking maybe they could stay with us for a while. A change of scenery might be good for them." She said it like she was merely rearranging furniture, but my chest tightened. This apartment had 3 bedrooms. Michael and I shared one. Lucas had his own. Where did she imagine putting 2 more adults? Our routines were already tight, and 3 generations under one roof was challenging enough. Adding her parents, each with their own habits and schedules, would mean constant collisions and compromises. I tried to speak gently. "Emily, I understand your concern for your parents. I really do. But space is already tight here. Where would they sleep? They're used to a different routine, and Lucas can be loud. It might actually be harder for them here." She just smiled, a thin, polite smile, and lowered her eyes to her plate, chewing as if I hadn't spoken. I thought perhaps she'd dropped the idea. Then the day came. I had just finished teaching my creative writing class at the community college and stopped by the store for ingredients, planning to make a nice dinner for once. I opened the front door and froze. Piled in the entryway were massive travel bags. From the living room came voices, loud, unfamiliar, and intrusive. I slipped off my shoes and stepped inside. On the sofa, 2 older strangers lounged comfortably, taking in the room as if it were a hotel lobby. The man had graying hair and a weathered face. The woman wore a faded floral dress and looked cautiously curious. Emily appeared from the master bedroom the moment she heard me. Her smile was wide and forced, rehearsed to perfection. She looped her arm through mine, chirping, "Margaret, you're home. Come say hello. My parents are here. Isn't it wonderful having the whole family under one roof?" I simply stood there, quietly registering that my home, the place I had built and protected for decades, was no longer entirely mine. Then Emily added, almost as if it were a passing thought, her voice dripping with feigned concern, "I've moved your things to the guest room. I thought it'd be better for my parents to have the main bedroom. They're light sleepers, you know, and it's quieter. Plus, the balcony gets so much sun. It'll be wonderful for them." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a discussion. It was an announcement. I didn't look at her. My gaze drifted past her to the partially closed master bedroom. I saw the corner of my old dresser, the one I'd used for more than a decade, now crowded with unfamiliar trinkets and ornaments. The houseplants I'd nurtured for 5 years were shoved into a corner, replaced by a stiff plastic imitation. My books, the photo albums, the keepsakes my late husband had left, all of it dumped into the small guest room as if it were worthless, hidden away, erased from memory. Michael stood behind Emily, looking anywhere but at me. His hands twisted nervously. His mouth opened and closed a few times before he finally mumbled, "Mom." She meant well, really meant well. What kind of kindness demands someone leave their own room, treats them like a stranger in their own home, and hides it all behind a smiling face? A cold shiver ran from the soles of my feet to the crown of my head, but beneath it, a slow, hot anger began to ignite, pressing deep into my chest. I didn't shout. I inhaled long and steady. Then I exhaled. "Calm, Margaret. Fighting with Emily would only make her play the victim. Michael? He wouldn't defend me. He was already under her influence. Any confrontation would leave me looking weak, and the house itself would become a battlefield where I would be the only casualty. I pulled my arm free, met Emily's eyes, and said with measured detachment, "Understood." Then I turned and walked into the guest room. The door felt like a solid wall, a silent barrier separating me from the new rulers of this house. Outside, Emily and her mother's laughter echoed through the apartment, discussing curtain fabrics, balcony chairs, and whether to plant herbs, as if the space had always belonged to them. Inside, the guest room was chaos. My clothes were strewn across the bed. My late husband's favorite books lay crushed under wrinkled fabric, corners bent and pages scuffed. A picture frame had fallen face down. The glass was cracked. In it, he and I were young again, smiling in spring sunlight, warmth radiating like the first bloom of the season. My heart shattered silently, like the glass. Michael followed me into the room, standing in the doorway like a boy caught in trouble, hands unsure where to go. "Mom, please, don't take it the wrong way. Emily didn't mean any harm," he said softly, voice quivering, almost apologetic. I didn't look at him. I said quietly, "You don't need to explain. I understand," and I did. I saw everything. Emily's careful, calculated moves, her disregard for me, the rightful owner of this home, and Michael, my son, so passive, so unwilling to stand up for me. No voice raised, no boundary set, no single sentence of support to make it right. I understood fully.